The 2022 FIFA World Cup has begun, and the world's top footballers will compete for 4 weeks for soccer's ultimate prize. However, the latest edition of the World Cup is completely surrounded by controversies. Qatar, a Persian Gulf nation around the size of Connecticut that is hosting the once every 4 years soccer championship for the first time, is primarily to blame for this World Cup's controversies. Concerns over human rights violations in Qatar, including charges that the country abused migrant labor, the LGBTQ+ issues, and the last-minute prohibition on alcohol, have all cast a shadow over the event. Here's a complete overview of all of the controversies surrounding the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Corruption over Qatar's winning bid to host. The men's national team of Qatar, which has been independent since 1971, has a limited sporting history. The 2022 host nation has never qualified for a World Cup. The victory of Qatar's bid to host the 2022 World Cup over rival bids from Australia, South Korea, Japan, and the United States prompted questions. However, Qatar was awarded the hosting duties despite concerns that it posed a high security risk, as well as concerns over the country's transportation and sanitation systems, as well as a lack of football tradition and infrastructure. In addition, its hosting selection was confirmed on the same day in December 2010 as Russia was selected to host the 2018 World Cup. Former FIFA president Sepp Blatter for the United States to host, but Qatar was ultimately chosen by a vote of 14-8. There were claims of vote trading, bribery, and corruption in regard to Qatar's victory. In 2020, U.S. prosecutors charged 3 former FIFA officials for accepting bribes to vote for Qatar. Despite this action by the United States Department of Justice, Qatar kept the hosting right of the World Cup. Former FIFA president Sepp Blatter said earlier this month that selecting Qatar to host the World Cup was a mistake since it is an insufficiently sized country. Treatment and pay for migrant workers. Due in part to Qatar's lack of infrastructure previous to the event, extensive work was required for the country to fulfill its hosting duties. The safety of numerous workers involved in the project has been questioned. According to a 2021 Guardian investigation citing government sources, 37 direct World Cup stadium construction workers had died. Despite the fact that 34 of these deaths were classed as non-work related, the classification of these deaths has been questioned in light of several reports of workers falling and dying. The Qatar World Cup Organizing Committee asserts that only 3 people have died during construction. In the summer, Gianni Infantino, the current president of FIFA, stated that there were 3 deaths only. Since 2010, the year the World Cup was given to Qatar, Amnesty International, a global human rights group, has documented thousands of migrant worker deaths in the country. Amnesty International, together with 23 other organizations, sent an open letter to FIFA's Infantino in May, requesting a remedy for labor abuses behind the 2022 World Cup. Prior to the World Cup, there were reportedly 1.7 million migrant laborers in Qatar, with the majority being from Bangladesh, India, and Nepal. More than 90% of the World Cup workforce consists of migrant laborers. According to Amnesty International, foreign laborers must pay between $500 and $4,300 to work in Qatar. In addition, many of these migrant workers are living in appalling living circumstances and have been misled about their wages, according to the organization. Moreover, many have been awaiting payments for months. Amnesty International has referred to the 2022 World Cup as the World Cup of Shame. Gender discrimination, LGBTQ+, and human rights abuses. The handling of migrant workers is not the only problem to be considered. Human Rights Watch has published a 42-page study highlighting the serious human rights concerns surrounding Qatar's preparations for the 2022 World Cup, including discrimination and violence against women and the LGBTQ+ community. As noted in the U.S. Bureau of Consular Affairs Travel Advice for Qatar, it is illegal for 2 men to engage in sexual activity in Qatar, and punishments include whipping, lengthy prison sentences, and deportation. Meanwhile, a Qatari World Cup ambassador recently provoked anger by claiming that homosexuals had, quote, mental damage. While there are no laws prohibiting same-sex sexual activity between women in Qatar, the country is generally conservative in this regard, according to a U.S. travel book. Men and women who engage in premarital or extramarital sex face 7 years in prison, according to regulations prohibiting such conduct. Human Rights Watch says that under this provision, rape victims have been penalized in the country. According to U.S. travel recommendations, unaccompanied women who go to Qatar may experience verbal or physical harassment. According to Human Rights Watch, women in Qatar cannot travel alone, must adhere to strict dress codes, and require permission from male guardians, fathers, brothers, husbands, etc., to exercise basic rights such as choosing whom to marry, obtaining reproductive care, pursuing higher education, and making decisions regarding their children's lives. On the other hand, the organizing body for the World Cup in Qatar has stated that the country protects and promotes the rights of women, and this extends to all female visitors. Regarding LGBTQ+ rights, Abdulaziz Al-Ansari, Qatar's senior security officer, has stated that homosexual couples will be welcomed and accepted in Qatar during the World Cup. However, you should not disparage the entire society because of this. Recently, a journalist from the United States was denied access to the match between Wales and the United States because he was wearing a t-shirt depicting a rainbow football. Journalist Grant Wall wore a t-shirt depicting a rainbow ball to the Ahmad bin Ali Stadium to demonstrate his support for the community. However, he has reported that security prevented him from entering the stadium's media entrance. They then detained him for 25 minutes while enraged, demanding that he remove the garment. In Qatar, same-sex partnerships are outlawed, and Mirror Football reported last week that LGBT+ individuals are being chased, detained, abused, and forced to undergo conversion therapy. A lack of transparency over climate initiatives. FIFA and the host nation Qatar have declared that the 2022 tournament will be the most eco-friendly in history, including a pledge to make the entire event carbon neutral. The amount of water that will need to be piped in, converted from saltwater to freshwater by desalination, or carried by truck to the desert nation is a concern for climate change activists. As a protest against claims of the abuse of the human rights of migrant workers building FIFA facilities and the tournament's environmental impact, French officials, for example, will not show World Cup events on huge screens for Parisians to view. The organizers have stated that climate-neutral technologies and more than 90% recycled materials were used in the construction of 8 stadiums. In addition, Qatar, which in recent years severed ties with the powerful OPEC cartel, supporting Middle Eastern oil production in order to export its primary natural gas independently, has pledged to reduce energy waste during matches. However, due to a lack of transparency on the part of the World Cup organizers and FIFA officials regarding the event as a whole, environmental guardians are hesitant to believe the carbon emissions, waste, recycling, and other metric figures. According to FIFA's official greenhouse gas emissions report, the competition is expected to generate approximately 3.6 million tons of carbon dioxide. That's 1.5 million tons more than the 2018 World Cup and more than other nations generate in a whole year. The majority of global warming is caused by carbon dioxide emissions, with human activities such as driving, powering technology, and cooling homes speeding the natural warming that occurs over generations. Banning beer at the last minute. Qatar has severe alcohol use laws. The UK prohibits its citizens from drinking in public or being intoxicated in public, according to a government travel guide. And drinking in a public location might result in a 6-month prison sentence. Some hotels and bars in Qatar are permitted to offer alcoholic beverages, but only after obtaining licenses to do so. Previously, Qatar stated that beer sales would be permitted within World Cup stadiums. And Budweiser reportedly spent $75 million to become the World Cup's official beer sponsor. But just 2 days before the tournament began, Qatar reversed course and stated that beer would not be sold in stadiums. During the 2022 World Cup, Qatar will only permit the sale of alcohol in a few luxurious hospitality zones of the stadiums, to which the majority of supporters would not have access. Some fans will be permitted to consume beer in the evenings in a designated location known as the FIFA Fan Festival, which also features live music and activities. Is the World Cup going to change in the light of these controversies? The short answer is most likely not. Since 2015, FIFA has implemented a number of reforms aimed to eradicate corruption and promote openness and accountability inside the organization. But it is still too late to determine whether these reforms will have the desired effect. In modest ways, players and spectators have demonstrated a fresh readiness to speak out against the scandals surrounding the event. In September, a collection of European soccer federations, including England, Germany, and France, announced intentions for members of their teams to wear rainbow armbands during games in protest of Qatar's treatments of its LGBTQ inhabitants. In the meantime, Denmark's national team presented a toned-down design for its kits in an effort to express its disapproval of Qatar's abuse of migrant workers. Several large cities in France have indicated in recent weeks that they will not set up fan zones to allow people to watch the games in public as they have in previous years. In the end, though, the World Cup's unequaled popularity is the biggest hurdle to FIFA reform. FIFA knows that every 4 years, no matter how horribly it behaves or how unhappy people are with the organization, everything is forgotten. This is how the World Cup runs for FIFA. Follow our channel for more football videos.